Hey everyone, James Little here, and in this video I'm going to be going through how to avoid scope creep, which ultimately leads to having better running projects and quicker paying clients. So scope creep is when you have a project where you've listed out all the different features for the job, what's involved, the different design phases and things like that. And scope creep is when those things you've listed get a little bit, let's say, expanded or magnified to the extent that, hey, that probably should have been a separate bullet point when you were scoping things out, and that's pushing the friendship basically, where you think, okay, this is not what I signed up for, this is kind of crap. So that's super frustrating. I've had it happen so many times when I was getting started, and I wish someone had kind of helped me out and said what I'm about to say. So the first thing can be, if there's some red flags, the client has absolutely no idea what they're wanting, then and the project was going to be fixed price, so let's say it was going to be $2,000, $5,000 or whatever for a website. If you're not really happy with where that direction is at the start, you can suggest to potentially move the project to a hourly project. So it depends really on the size of the project, but I'm saying this point because it puts you in the driver's seat where you're saying, okay, look, this is going to be something that's going to be an ongoing process, and we're going to get to it eventually, because the destination is not even clear with what you want in your head. So if you say just move to whatever hourly rate you normally work with, it provides such a lot more flexibility and reduces the risk that you're going to get stitched up with a client that sucks, that really just starts changing the scope every day and thinks like it's fine because you've agreed for that fixed price, where in reality you're losing the time and then you're going back and you're not getting paid more. So the second point is to talk about the risks when you're seeing and scoping things out. So there's going to be times where functionality looks very vague, or features aren't clear that the client doesn't necessarily want. So you want to identify those early on before you've agreed to an amount you're working for, and take the time to really understand and get a very clear definition of what completed looks like for this task. What would the best case scenario look like for them in that situation? And then that gives you the clarity to know, all right, if this is something that is a bit riskier, then we obviously need to allocate more budget to it. But in terms of avoiding, back to the topic of the video, to avoid scope creep, you don't necessarily, you just want to make sure those risks and the bottlenecks potentially in those specific features have been broken down into further bullet points. So they're not going to come to you and say, I wanted a checkout, and then what they considered a checkout experience to be was a whole email remarketing sequence for an abandoned cart, someone that didn't do a checkout, which doesn't make sense to me or you, but in some cases there'll be clients that just expect that. And if you're very clear to say this is what it does and doesn't include, then you're going to get that clarity. Then when they try to request stuff, you can just say, no, look, it's not in the scope. And that kind of brings me to the next point on if the client does come to you and says, okay, we do want this extra feature or whatever, I don't see it, the way we've structured it, I don't see it as a big problem, because when we started working with things, I've scoped everything out super clear. So when they come time to say, oh, we don't want it on MailChimp for the email form, we want it to go to Zoho as a CRM, so you've got to do the API connection. When that happens, instead of okay, damn, I'll just do it and cop that on the chin, I say, okay, that's fine, but it's clearly a scope change, and then we're going to re-quote it, or we'll just charge hourly and then we'll send you the invoice at the end. And in those cases, because you made it so clear that, okay, this is the scope, and then anything else will be charged kind of hourly, that's the way we structure it. We say anything that's the scope is fine, that's for the agreed price, but if you decide to add a feature or add something else, then we're going to just charge our hourly rate, and then that's it. And so that's no problem to me, because it just means the project ends up being bigger, and either the client will say, oh no, let's just leave it with MailChimp for now, or okay, fine, let's do that, and I'll pay that extra amount at the end. And so really that kind of leads me to that last point about having a basic agreement. So you don't need to have a huge contract with pages and pages, but essentially you're just trying to get your risk reduced and out on paper to say, this is the scope. If there's changes to the scope, it's going to be either charged hourly or re-quoted at a fixed price. And then from there, you're just saying like other things like, yeah, I mean, ultimately that's the main thing. You're just trying to say if there's going to be extra things that you try and slip in as a scope creep, then it's not going to work. Like you're just going to have to pay extra. And what that results in is there's no more projects where you are working for extra when you've already put in your hours and it should be done. It just, and that makes for much smoother flowing projects and clients that are much happier because they know that, all right, you've made it super clear at the start. They've had the opportunity to add in the extra scope things, and anything else that falls outside of it is on them. So I hope you've enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.